Welcome to the podcast, Short Talks.
If you have ever watched a tragedy unfold on the news or, sat next to a hospital bed and just thought, if I were God, I would have stopped that. Well, you definitely aren't alone.
Oh, absolutely not alone.
Yeah, and in fact, ancient theologians, they completely agree with your outrage because usually when we're like scrolling through a news feed or trying to make sense of some sudden disaster, our brains desperately search for cause and effect.
Right. We want a very clean narrative. We crave that.
Exactly. We want a clean narrative.
Yeah.
But when we step into the territory of profound suffering, that narrative just totally shatters. We're left staring at this agonizing landscape, and it forces this universal burning question right to the surface. Where is God when bad things happen? Why doesn't he intervene?
It really is the ultimate human dilemma. I mean, throughout history, philosophers and theologians have completely wrestled with this. And today, we are doing a deep dive into a specific set of sources from the Orthodox Christian tradition.
And the goal here is to really simplify the mystery of evil, especially for someone who might be, completely new to Orthodox theology.
Yeah, and what stands out immediately in these texts is how they take our modern assumptions about that exact question, the why does God allow this question, and they flip them upside down.
They really do. Mm-hmm. We're looking specifically at a piece by Metropolitan Konstantinos of Singapore. Mm-hmm. And the very first thing he establishes is this massive paradigm shift. Because I know so many people who ask, why does God allow this? Mm-hmm. And then they immediately feel this heavy wave of guilt.
Oh, yeah. Like they're doing something wrong just by asking.
Right. They feel like questioning the state of the world means they are like failing at having faith.
Well, the Metropolitan addresses that directly, which is fascinating. He argues that this question is actually the voice of a soul seeking justice.
Which is such a relief to hear.
Right. Think about the implications there. When you look at an injustice and you feel anger, it proves that on a deep, instinctive level, you believe there is a right way the world should be. You possess this innate sense of order.
And you believe there's a creator who ought to restore that order.
Exactly. So questioning God in the face of tragedy it's not a loss of faith at all. It is a demand for the justice you just know in your bones should exist.
That reframing is incredibly validating for anyone listening. It tells you that your confusion and your anger are actually evidence of your moral compass working exactly as it should.
It really is.
So our mission for this deep dive is to explore the Orthodox Christian response to the mystery of evil. Using that exact framework, we are going to bypass the cheap consolations, no empty platitudes about, everything happening for a reason.
Yeah, no thanks. We're keeping the dense academic jargon out of it, too.
Absolutely. We want to take a profound, intellectually honest look at why a good God tolerates an unjust world and simplify these concepts so you can actually use them to make sense of things.
So to build that framework, we really have to start at the absolute beginning of, human design. You just can't separate the existence of evil from the concept of human freedom.
Okay, freedom.
Yeah. The sources suggest that to understand why God tolerates the horrible things we do to each other, we first have to understand the fundamental prerequisite for love.
Okay, let me throw a real-world frustration out there, because this is where my brain always gets stuck.
Go for it.
If I'm writing the code for a video game, I can program the characters to be perfectly peaceful. I can literally remove their ability to harm each other. I can even program them to walk up to my avatar and say, I love you. So why couldn't God do the equivalent of that?
Right, why risk it?
Yeah, why risk creating a world where we have the capacity to do such terrible things?
Because a programmed response is, it's completely meaningless. If you code a video game character to say, I love you, you know they had no choice in the matter.
I mean, yeah, I force the output.
Exactly. St. John Damascus, who is a major early thinker in this tradition, he touches on this heavily. He describes humans as being created self-determining.
The self-determining.
Right. His argument is that freedom is the non-negotiable precondition for genuine love. A God who forces goodness, who violently strips away your ability to make a bad choice, that wouldn't be a God of love.
He would just be a cosmic programmer of puppets.
Precisely, a programmer of puppets. We would be biological machines just executing a script. And the sources also bring in St. Gregory of Nyssa to take this a step further.
Okay, what does he add?
Well, we constantly hear the phrase that humans are made in the image of God, right? St. Gregory points out that bearing the image of God actually requires this terrifying level of self-determination.
Because God himself is free.
Yes, God himself is entirely free. You cannot be a reflection of ultimate freedom if you are locked into a forced behavioral loop, even if that loop is doing good.
Wow. So to truly be like God, the safety rails had to be removed. Like we had to be given the keys to the car, knowing full well we had the capacity to drive it straight off a cliff.
That's the tragic price of it. The capacity to freely choose love inherently opens the door to freely refuse it. It's a package deal.
You can't have one without the other.
No, you can't create a being capable of profound, self-sacrificing love without simultaneously giving that being the power to choose extreme selfishness, cruelty, and injustice.
Bringing this back to the listener's everyday life, when you see something terrible happen, the Orthodox perspective said this isn't proof that God is absent or apathetic.
Not at all.
What you are witnessing is the agonizing, tragic price of the freedom he gave us. We're looking at the collateral damage of not being programmed machines.
Which forces us to confront a really uncomfortable follow-up question.
I think I know where this is going.
Yeah. If this freedom allows things to go so horribly wrong, where did the evil actually come from? If God created the entire universe, the whole board game and all the pieces, doesn't logic dictate that he had to create the evil too?
I struggle with that constantly.
Right.
If God made everything, didn't he have to invent the disease, the malice, the trapdoors? How do you separate the creator from the flaws in the creation?
The Orthodox teaching here is incredibly specific, and it really challenges our usual way of visualizing good and bad.
Okay.
The sources state definitively that God did not create evil, and the reason is that evil has no actual substance.
Wait, what do you mean no substance?
It is not an essence, it's not an object, and it's not a thing that was created alongside goodness.
Well, wait, if it's not a thing, what is it? Because when you were sitting in a chemo ward, or when you were watching a war unfold on TV, evil feels extremely real.
Oh, it is deeply felt.
Yeah, it feels like an active aggressive force, not just some theoretical concept.
It feels active because of how it operates, but we have to look at its mechanics. The classic analogy used in these texts is darkness.
Darkness.
Yeah. Darkness isn't a physical substance. You can't fill a jar with darkness, and you can't measure the physical particles of cold. Darkness is simply the state of things when light is absent.
Oh. Okay, so cold is just the absence of heat?
Exactly. In the same way, the sources argue that evil is a deprivation. It is the absence of good. Better yet, think of it as a parasite.
A parasite? Okay, well, a parasite needs a living host to survive. It can't exist on its own.
You hit the nail on the head. A parasite doesn't have an independent creative existence. It can only latch onto something good and healthy and corrupt it.
So evil is just the corruption of God's good creation.
Yes. God created the healthy host, but humans invited the parasite.
But how does that invitation actually happen? Like, how do we go from having this beautiful self-determining freedom to a world infected with this parasite?
For the mechanics of the fall, the Metropolitan points to St. Maximus the Confessor. And Maximus explains that sin is fundamentally a distortion of our design.
The distortion?
Yeah. Humanity was created with a natural orientation, a movement flowing outward toward God and outward toward others in love.
Okay, I'm picturing that.
But we took that natural movement and through our free will, we bent it. We turned it inward, obsessing over our own egos and our own selfish passions.
Okay, it actually makes me think of a garden hose.
Oh, I like that. How so?
Well, the water flowing through it represents goodness, life, connection, right? If I take that hose and forcefully bend it back on itself to create a kink, the water stops flowing.
God, that's a great visual.
And the water itself isn't bad.
Yeah.
The hose isn't bad. But the kink, that inward distortion, blocks the flow of life.
Yeah.
And the grass on the other side dries up and dies.
That perfectly illustrates the mechanism St. Maximus is describing. The dried up grass is the disease, the decay, and the injustice we experience. It is the result of the flow of life being blocked by our own inward turning. And the sources emphasize that this kink in the hose didn't just affect human psychology. It caused a catastrophic cosmic ripple effect.
Wait, cosmic? Are we saying human selfishness actually broke the physical environment?
We are.
Because it's one thing to say, my bad choices hurt my neighbor. It's a huge leap to say human sin causes, like, a tsunami. How does that mechanism even work?
Well, the Orthodox tradition views humanity as the microcosm of the universe, the bridge between the physical and the spiritual. Humans were intended to be the priests of creation, drawing the natural world up toward God.
Okay, so we had a leadership role.
Exactly. Think of humanity as the conductor of an orchestra. The natural world is the symphony. If the conductor suddenly decides to ignore the sheet music and just wildly wave his arms to his own internal rhythm, the entire orchestra descends into chaos.
Oh, man. The instruments are fine, but the music becomes a terrifying noise because the leadership is corrupted.
Precisely. The source material cites the Apostle Paul in the book of Romans here, where he writes that the whole creation groans.
The whole creation groans.
Right. When humanity turned inward, we drag the rest of the natural world down with us into decay. The environment itself bears the marks of this broken stewardship.
That clarifies so much. But it also leads directly to the most frustrating part of this entire topic for me.
Which is?
The problem of intervention. If humans broke the world, if we kinked the hose and ruined the symphony and God is all-powerful, why doesn't he just reach down and fix it?
Yeah, the demand for immediate divine intervention is the most natural human reflex.
It is, because look, if I'm walking down the street and I see someone attacking an innocent person, I don't stand there and respect the attacker's free will. I tackle the guy. I stop the pain.
Right, you intervene.
So why does God's tolerance of these events look so indistinguishable from apathy?
It looks like apathy from our limited street-level vantage point, but the sources introduce St. Isaac the Syrian here to explain the restraint of absolute power.
Restraint of power.
Yeah, St. Isaac argues that God educates through love, not through vengeance or immediate force.
I need that broken down. What happens if God does use force?
Well, imagine the mechanics of what you're asking for. If God forcibly intervened every single time a human being made a bad choice, if an invisible divine hand smacked you down the exact second you went to lie or steal or physically harm someone, human consciousness would fundamentally change.
Oh, I see.
You would no longer be acting out of love or goodness. You would be acting entirely out of terror.
Yeah, I wouldn't be a moral agent. I'd be like an animal in a cage avoiding a shock collar.
You would be in a cosmic straitjacket. God would be actively overriding the self-determining freedom he gave you.
So the image of God thing gets erased.
Exactly. The image of God within humanity would be destroyed by the Creator himself in the name of safety. Demanding that God physically stop every bad act the second it's conceived is essentially demanding the complete eradication of human freedom.
That is a brutal trade-off. We either get a world with risk and real love, or a perfectly safe world where we are terrified automatons.
It's a heavy reality.
But I imagine people hearing this are thinking, okay, I get the theory, but I'm still left holding the bag of injustice. Like, I'm still suffering right now.
And that is where St. John Chrysostom comes into the text. Chrysostom points out a fundamental error in how we perceive time and justice. We are constantly confusing the present age with eternity.
We act like the story is over while we're still in the middle of the second act.
Yes. Chrysostom explains that history, the timeline we are living in right now, is not the final state of reality. History is the cultivation field.
Cultivation field.
It's the messy, painful growing season where freedom is exercised. But full justice, the absolute righting of every wrong, belongs to the eschaton, the last judgment. The harvest comes at the end of the season.
So God's tolerance isn't him turning a blind eye, it's a delay. It's him giving humanity the time and space to freely choose, knowing that ultimate vindication is secured at the end of the timeline.
He guarantees the final outcome, but refuses to force the process.
Okay, I hear that logic, and it makes sense on paper. But I have to push back again because it still feels incredibly cold.
How so?
This concept of waiting for the last judgment makes God sound like a distant CEO. Like, he's sitting in a pristine, safe corner office on the top floor of the universe, looking down at us, struggling in the warehouse, saying, "Don't worry, human resources will sort out all your grievances at the end of the fiscal year."
That's quite an image.
But really, does he just watch us bleed from afar?
If the theology stopped there, it would be cold. It would just be another philosophical defense of a detached deity. But the sources pivot here to the most crucial defining aspect of the Orthodox response.
Let's pivot.
The ultimate answer to the problem of evil isn't a theory or a logical equation. It is a person, Christ.
The incarnation changes the equation.
Completely. God did not stay in the corner office. He didn't just send down a memo defending his policies on free will. He entered the brokenness himself.
He became part of it.
He took on physical flesh, stepped into the corrupted kink reality, and subjected himself to the absolute worst consequences of human freedom. The sinless one was betrayed, tortured, and crucified.
It's the difference between a general who watches a battle through binoculars from a safe hill 2 miles away and a general who jumps down into the muddy, terrifying trench alongside you, unarmed, taking the bullets himself.
That trench warfare analogy captures the theology perfectly. The source is, quote, St. Gregory the theologian, who provided one of the most famous axioms in early Christianity. What was not assumed was not healed.
What was not assumed was not healed. How does that actually work in practice?
It means that for God to heal human pain, human betrayal, and ultimately human death, he had to fully absorb it into himself. He had to assume our nature entirely.
So he couldn't just stay far away.
Right. He couldn't just wave a magic wand from a distance and declare everything fixed. He had to enter the disease to create the antidote. He experienced the absolute depths of pain and death to conquer it from the inside out through the resurrection.
So the crucifixion isn't God abandoning the world to injustice, and it isn't a moment of defeat. It's like a rescue mission.
It is the ultimate proof that God invaded the injustice. He experienced the worst of what our twisted free will can inflict, guaranteeing that no matter how deep into the darkness or suffering a human being falls, they will always find God already there, waiting in the trench with them.
Wow, that fundamentally changes how you view God's relationship to pain. But looking at the sources, I had a sudden, very uncomfortable realization about our own role in all of this.
Uh-oh. What is it?
Well, if Christ entered the trenches, and if he conquered death from the inside out, why is the world still such a mess? We still have poverty, rampant greed, and absolute cruelty. Who is responsible for cleaning up the wreckage right now?
This is where the source material shifts from high theology to something intensely practical and honestly deeply challenging. The Metropolitan brings in St. Basil the Great.
Oh, right.
He was a 4th century bishop, famous for his fiery sermons on social justice. And as the sources point out, St. Basil does not pull his punches.
What was his argument?
He essentially argued that a massive portion of the suffering we look up at the sky and blame God for is entirely our own fault.
Ouch.
Yeah. St. Basil looked at the starvation and extreme poverty in his own city, and he placed the blame squarely on the hoarding and hard-heartedness of the wealthy.
Just calling it out directly.
Very directly. He said that the bread sitting molding in your pantry belongs to the starving. The shoes rotting in your closet belong to the barefoot.
He is basically saying, do not ask God why that person is starving when you have the resources to feed them.
Exactly. He forces us to realize that what we defensively call God's tolerance of evil is very often just our own inaction. It's our refusal to step up and be the instruments of divine justice in the middle of history.
So we are just trying to outsource our own moral responsibilities back to God.
We demand that God magically resolve the exact crises he explicitly commanded us to fix. The Orthodox tradition forces a radical reversal of our favorite question.
But why doesn't God stop this question?
Right. Instead of sitting back looking at a homeless crisis or a systemic injustice and asking, why doesn't God correct this? We are required to ask, why do I not become his hands to correct it?
We are supposed to be the co-workers in the cleanup. I mean, the kink in the hose was created by humanity turning inward. So the unkinking process has to be humanity turning outward again toward the suffering of others.
We're invited to participate in the healing of the world, but, and this is a vital caveat the sources leave us with, we have to be incredibly careful not to treat this like a math equation we have successfully solved.
Right, because we haven't neatly tied up the problem of evil with a bow.
Not at all. Despite exploring the necessity of freedom, the parasitic nature of evil, the incarnation in the trenches, and our call to action, Orthodox theology freely admits that it does not eliminate the sting of tragedy.
No theology really can.
Suffering remains a profound mystery. And in this context, a mystery isn't a puzzle waiting for a clever detective. It is a reality that surpasses our rational capacity.
Yeah, if you try to logic your way out of the grief of losing a child or the trauma of surviving abuse, intellectual theology is going to fall completely flat.
Which is exactly why the Metropolitan points to the biblical story of Job as the final framework. Job is the ultimate case study in inexplicable suffering.
He loses everything.
Everything. His wealth, his health, and his entire family in one fell swoop. He sits in the ashes and demands answers from God. He essentially puts the Creator on trial.
And when God finally responds out of the whirlwind, he doesn't hand Job a theological essay.
He doesn't give Job a PowerPoint presentation on free will and the cosmic symphony. God gives Job an encounter. He manifests his divine presence.
Wow.
And that overwhelming experience of God's glory leads Job to say, I had heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you.
So the answer wasn't an explanation. The answer was presence.
That is the deepest Orthodox answer to the problem of evil. It is not a bullet-pointed list justifying why a specific agonizing thing happened to you. It is the certainty, cemented by the cross, that God is not indifferent.
He's in the trenches with us.
He walks with us through the very center of the fire. And we have the eschatological hope that the final word in human history will not belong to the injustice that breaks our hearts today. The final word belongs to his justice.
It is the profound comfort of knowing that even in pitch blackness, you are not alone in the room. As we wrap up this deep dive into the source material, I want to leave you, the listener, with something to carry with you today.
Yeah, a final thought.
We started by talking about that burning expectation for justice you feel when you see something terrible happen. I want you to think about the one specific injustice in the world that angers you the most right now. It could be a massive global conflict, or it could be a quiet tragedy unfolding right down your street. The thing that makes your blood boil, makes you look up at the sky and demand, where is God in this?
Hold that in your mind.
What if that anger you are feeling isn't just a philosophical reflex? What if it is a direct calling? What if God is waiting for you to be the answer to your own question today?
Thank you very much for your time. See you soon.